everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Monday, September 22nd, 2025. Alastair Crooke will be here with us in just a moment. Is there a rule-based order internationally remaining, or is it gone? But first, this. We all know how devastating war is. Lives lost, communities destroyed. But war can also threaten your financial freedom. That's where America's heading, our growing involvement in global conflicts. It means more spending, more debt, and a weaker dollar. That's a direct hit to your wallet. So here are three things to keep your eyes on: exploding debt, declining dollar, rising prices of gold and silver. These things are already happening. Goldman Sachs predicts gold could hit $4,500 an ounce by 2026. Why? Because central banks and smart investors are buying gold hand over fist. They know what's coming and they're hedging against it. Currency collapse, inflation, and market volatility. Gold has been a trusted store of value for thousands of years, and today we need that protection more than ever. Call Lear Capital now at 800-511-4620 or visit LearJudgeNap.com. No one is going to protect your wealth for you. You need to do it yourself, and now is the time. Alastair, good day to you, my friend. Thank you, as always, for joining us. Does the now nearly universal recognition of the Palestinian state have any geopolitical significance, or is it just performative or symbolic?
It's just the performative, because there's no attention given, or there's no prospect of actually implementing it, because there are 800,000 settlers in the way. So they're not going to be removed, or removed easily. And Israel is certainly not going to remove them or even accept the idea of a Palestinian state. So it's performative, but in a sense it does give, I think it is important, mainly in the sense of giving a sort of a boost to the idea of Palestine, of reminding people that there is such a thing, and always was in that part of the world, a Palestine. So no, it's not going to be a change, but it is nonetheless symbolically important that this happens.
Why is all of this happening now? Because of the United Nations meeting, General Assembly meeting here in New York tomorrow?
Mainly that, and also because the Europeans are becoming increasingly divided and factious over what to do about Gaza, particularly between Germany and the other European states. Germany still drags its feet in terms of any support for the Palestinians. So it is really, yes, it's really about also giving some sort of legitimacy, because people like Starmer have been viciously and successfully attacked for their position on Gaza, for their lack of action or taking any position at all, because they're all so concerned. And the reason for this is mainly because they're so concerned to keep on side with Trump, in the hope that by being good and sort of agreeing to, accept his trade rules and to not, if you like, disturb his boat in terms of Gaza, that this will persuade him to be tougher on Russia in Ukraine. Of course, I don't think it'll make the slightest difference to Trump. He regards these statements by Starmer and Macron as pointless exercises, a bit troublesome, but pointless.
What remains of the international rule-based order written by the U.S., boasted about by the U.S., certainly not followed any longer?
No, we are certainly, we're at that awkward process that the old order is dying and is dead, one of the most curious things about it, most interesting in a way, is that the biggest advocacies for its ending were the original designers of it, the United States and Britain. And both of those, and Trump has been very clear in saying that the international order is now a liability for the United States. It's something that is damaging and that we need to do away with it. But the most obvious effect of this is the complete tearing up of laws, of values that we've seen by Israel in this period, where it is just simply very, very deliberately ignored frontiers, ignored the position of states. It is just simply gone in what I call sort of mad dog military action against states. I mean, even in the last weeks, it's attacked 6 states altogether, including Syria and Lebanon and Tunisia and, of course, Yemen and, of course, Doha. So, I mean, all of those, and I think that, you raised this and said, is it over? I think there's an important thing happening. I mean, clearly this is this is not coming about by accident. This is a deliberate policy to eradicate all the rules and values, if you like, that were associated with that order or with that sort of value system, and deliberately is being done. And it's being done for a purpose, of course. But also it is, in so doing, it is trying to move the West from what, if you like, the right in Israel, like to term moral relativism. Moral relativism in this terms means the Western idea of a just war, of values that you don't kill civilians. All of these things, like in the Vienna Treaty and all these things, are called moral relativism, as Israel tries to move the West towards a different form of value judgment, a value judgment closer to the Talmud and the Old Testament, a very, of course, a violent and intolerant, if you like, aspect of those texts, like with the Amalek, that they must be destroyed, women, children, even their cattle have to be destroyed. So it is an attempt to sort of upgrade our sort of moral values by substituting the moral values of what they call absolute justice, which is, no, there can be no compromise. With people who are opposed to us, who are threatening to us, they must be killed. Women, children, particularly the children, because they might grow up and become so-called terrorists in the place, in their stead. So it is a deliberate thing. But ultimately, what is the aim? What is this all about? Why are we seeing this sort of mad dog, no rules, no borders, no limits policies coming out of Israel and being supported and emulated by the United States? And I would say to you that this is basically paving the way for the war on Iran and paving the way for a war on Iran. And what is the purpose of that war on Iran? Ultimately, it was said very clearly by Ron Dermer in a podcast that I listened to a few months ago. I mean, he's really, in terms of his ideology, joined at the hip with Netanyahu. They both think very similar. And he was saying, that the Palestinians need to be completely disarmed. And then he said, and of course, they have to be transformatively de-radicalized. And the interviewer said, well, what do you mean de-radicalized in this fundamental way? How do you understand that? And he said, well, look at the Second World War. Look what the bombing did to Germany. They remained then allies of America ever since. And he said, but the better example, of course, is Japan. They have been completely de-radicalized and subordinated after the bombs that were dropped on them. So you have to think about this, because this is really what we're talking about. The purpose of the war on Iran, it's not about the nuclear issue. The main issue for this is to produce a defeat that is so complete, so utter, so humiliating, that the whole of the Middle East is de-radicalized and ready to come to terms and accept Israel as the preeminent culture of the Middle East. And so this is really what is going on in this process of moving away. And this is why I think you're also seeing that the West is emulating many of these tactics. They're emulating decapitation strikes. Hesketh said that, I think, pretty clearly during the Yemen attack. Our aim is to decapitate the Houthi leadership, assassinations, killing of the cabinet member in Yemen, and then now moving away from legality altogether and convention and treaties. Look what happens to in Venezuela, where boats are just sort of vaporized in international water, not knowing who they are or what they are. We're told they're narco terrorists or something, but they're not intercepted, they're not arrested, they're just. So all of this movement is really because the aim is to, as I say, and it is rather a dark comment that Ron Dharma made, because of course the final, what he was referring to when he said, the better example was Japan, he wasn't explicit, he didn't say it, but we all got the message. Hiroshima, we understood what he's talking about, that they want to have a crushing absolute defeat on Iran. Now, I don't know whether they can do this, and I'm not sure that they can. I mean, I think they're looking now, and the United States is sending all the weapons. It's ready. It's sending $6 billion of weapons to Israel in preparation. They've done the other preparation. They prepared the ground for snapback of sanctions. That was passed through the Security Council. It wasn't a Security Council vote, it was a procedural vote, but it needed 9 votes in order for the snapback not to go ahead. And they didn't get the 9 votes, so snapback goes ahead. Snapback was originally triggered on the 28th of August, I think. So 30 days on from that, that brings us up to sort of next week or so. Snapback will come into being. Now, Iran has been playing this very long, I think, being very careful about this and saying, well, we'll talk to the AEA. And it's produced a big result. And I think it's not one that's noticed, but it goes back to your point at the beginning, because we got Russia and China stating after the snapback vote, saying, we will not implement any sanctions on Iran, but we do not recognize the legality of the vote, and we believe it was procedurally flawed. It is the first time, in my experience, where both Russia and China have, if you like, renounced the last element of the post-war institutional structures, the Security Council. Not the Charter, but the Security Council. They've rebuffed it and said, we just don't accept it. And that is a big, big change for the Russia and China, who have always been very particular about observing the Security Council decisions, have said, we don't accept this. This is what Iran was wanting and waiting for, and why they were being so amenable to Grossi, who is hated in Iran and the IAEA, who were contributing towards the attacks that Israel made on the 13th of June against Iran. They were looking for that, and also because, again, this is more complex, but in due course, perhaps China and Iran and Russia might be ready to provide more material support if Iran is attacked. It won't be just now because we're going into the Jewish high holidays, but in later this year, if it is attacked, Iran wants to make sure that China and Russia are willing to do that. Now, I think the timing on that is very complex. I think the timing of this is complex because I think from Russia's perspective, it would be much easier, and China's too, if the Ukraine war was somehow finished and over. Then they could turn their attention more easily to the Middle East. But if it isn't finished, then it's perhaps not so easy for Russia and China to give that support. So the timing, it doesn't work exactly, possibly. Who knows what will happen in the next 2 weeks? But I think that's why Iran has been playing this long and getting highly criticized at home. The people have attacked the reformists and said they're just weak and betraying the country by, talking to the IAEA.
Well, you can't blame them for being angry
Right.
at Grossi. He's basically a Mossad agent.
Yes, exactly. But I think that's the reason they've done it. Is that there is a sort of diplomatic, strategic benefit that made them sort of, they just had to curb their emotions and do it because it has produced, a complete rejection of the Security Council by China and Russia, and the assurance that they will not observe the sanctions on it, and therefore nor will India observe sanctions.
What kind of damage is Netanyahu doing to the state of Israel as a freestanding sovereign country? He has no plan for tomorrow, does he? Other than what you've talked about, the humiliation of the Arab world, starting with Iran.
No, but this plan, this proposal, and what we've seen is, and I've just alluded to it. Israel has moved enormously in this last year or so. I keep mentioning this. It's gone from Ben Gurion to Kahan. It has become a very brutalistic state. Brutal towards Gaza, brutalistic towards the West Bank and to all the other states around it, but it's also brutalistic internally. You see that where the people who are supporting the hostage families. The hostage families used to be held up as sort of ideals, models and everything. And now the hostage families are attacked viciously by the police, and they're spat at and cursed and told that they are traitors to this new Israel that is coming. And what are we doing then? What does this mean for Israel? It means, Israel has gone, back to 48, where there was, as Ilan Pappé described it, 800,000 Palestinians were ethnically cleansed from their homes, 531 villages erased. There was assassinations, mass killings, children were killed, others were killed. And that's never really been dealt with in the Israeli world. There was an investigation, the results still haven't been produced. There was no accountability, no justice for these illegal elements. And that sort of brutalism is back today, as we see it for the West Bank and Gaza.
None of
And
this.
it's creating a great question. I mean, for Israelis, is this what we stand for? Are we just an empty vessel that goes around killing and ethnically cleansing?
Well, do
Is
they
that
have
Israel?
any moral principles? You can't call Netanyahu's desire to trouble the landmass of Israel a moral principle. Do they have any moral principles, any first principles whatsoever?
Not in the sense that we would understand it in the West. They just have them one principle that guides it, which is absolute obedience to the word of God as expressed in the Old Testament or in the terms of the very early Torah and Talmud. That is it. It is not a moral code. It is obedience, absolute obedience to what is written and instructed and what the rabbis tell you. Not a question to make your own moral judgment or to consider what are the sort of deep sense of what is right and wrong that every human being has in himself. No, you have to prove your fear of God by absolute obedience, not questioning. And that is deeply in that.
Is the country suffering economically, commercially, culturally?
Completely. I mean, it is at odds with people are at odds with one another. There's huge hatred and bitterness. One of the other elements to this process, and it's the same now in the West, unfortunately, is politics have become brutalized in the West as well. So that if there's a sort of sore on the body of the politics in the West, politicians stick their fingers in and move it around and make it as sore and as difficult as possible, because that's how they get on in today's world. That if you have something and you make a big controversy and a contested and create hate for one side with the other, then you bring one side with you and you make the other an outlaw. And this, it's not about bringing people together. It is about creating, if you like, division and dislike and anger in the society. And that's what Israel is suffering from. So people are leaving, and the flights are full, and it's difficult. People are going. People who can are going. Not everyone has the passports and things, but many do. So, I mean, and there's divisions, this, if you like, anger and hatred internally. I mean, against the families who are worried about the hostages, because the hostages are certainly going to be, will not survive this offensive that is taking place against Gaza. And that offensive isn't even working so far. It was supposed to be a quick, shock and awe rush in with all those tanks. We've seen the pictures of all the tanks lined up and going in. And of course, I mean, the one thing that underlines the divisions is the chief of staff, military staff, is opposed to it. And he's saying, look, we won't achieve anything with this. We're not going to win. It's not going to come. But Netanyahu's promised Trump that, and Trump seems to be completely tied to Israel.
Can Israel do any of this in the long term without the support of the United States?
No, it cannot, because, I mean, it is not only about money and about weapons and other things, because the whole point of the standing of Israel in the world is because it is seen as, the little brother of the United States. And so long as it is seen, and it's seen that the president of the United States completely sides with it, that's where its power derives from. Now, what's happening now in the US is a very important change in that the people are, for the first time, that assassination of Charlie Kirk I don't know about the exact circumstances, but what it has done, it has let the genie out of the bottle, and young Americans and not so young Americans are questioning, why is it, why this takeover of the White House? Why this takeover of the means of communication, of all of the platforms that is taking place? Why is it that TikTok has to be run by a cabal of Jewish oligarchs? What's going on, and why is that happening? And this is so threatening, of course, to Netanyahu and to the whole structure. Very threatening, because it threatens that Israel might lose America, and that it can't survive. It can't survive that. So, I mean, this means that I think, too, that if they can, they will go ahead and attack Iran before too long, because they know the time is running out now after what happened with Charlie Kirk. The time is running out on them, and they need to try and get this done before that time expires.
Max Blumenthal reports that the Zionist oligarchs in the United States are in a state of panic, trying to recreate the image of Charlie Kirk as a steadfast supporter of Netanyahu's slaughter, when, of course, he was not. He was moving in leaps and bounds against that before he died. Of course, he's dead now, but he leaves behind millions and millions of followers who appear to have been moving in that direction also, as you indicated. One last question about the Middle East before I let you go. Why does Trump want the Bagram Air Force Base back? I mean, Secretary of State at the time, Mike Pompeo, negotiated with the Taliban, not with the then government of Afghanistan, to release Taliban prisoners, to get the U.S. out of Afghanistan, to give the air base to the new government of Afghanistan, which became the Taliban within days of our departure.
Oh, this is just, I think, a Trumpian diversion. I mean, by the way, it wasn't Americans who created the base. It was the Soviet Union. I remember it was there when I was on the borders of Afghanistan, even then. But I don't think. Look, I think what we're seeing is something quite different taking place geopolitically. Already, the new national defense framework is suggesting the pullback of forces from China and the Pacific to the homeland, as they put it, and to the Western Hemisphere, Latin America. And I think that this is something that's happening because I think there is now a real concern for Trump. And I can't vouch for this, but this is my sense of what it is he wants those forces back. Now, first of all, because they've realized, China's not doable. I mean, they can't attack China, not for the long time. But the second thing is, I think he needs the manpower to go ahead with the removal of immigrants. You can't remove millions of immigrants. It'll be a huge project requiring lots of people, and also because of the antipathy that is arising in the United States. I think those troops are not intended to be sort of marched against China or other states. They will be deployed in U.S. cities, I'm afraid.
Notwithstanding federal statutes that prohibit it. Here's a statement from the Taliban army chief, translated into English, that the Bagram Air Base will not become America's property on our watch.
There have been persistent rumors circulating from some circles, suggesting that we are currently engaged in sensitive negotiations with the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan regarding the potential retaking of the strategically vital Bagram airfield. I want to personally assure our beloved and dear compatriots, the resilient people of Afghanistan, this is a matter that is simply not possible to concede. and it will, without a shadow of a doubt, never, ever happen under our watch.
There you go.
Very
Right on.
categoric.
Yes, Alastair, thank you. Thank you very much for your extraordinary explanation of what Israel is up to and the problems it has caused and will continue to cause. Thank you for joining us as always. Thanks for accommodating my schedule. Look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you very much, Judge. Bye
All
for
the
now.
best. All the best, my dear friend. Coming up later this morning at 10 o'clock this morning, Ray McGovern. At 11:30, Larry Johnson. At 2 this afternoon, a new guest, a fascinating investigative reporter, will tell us how the CIA is destroying civil liberties in America. His name is Harrison Berger, and he'll be with us at 2 o'clock. Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.